Welcome back. You're watching Ian King Live. Radical steps need to be taken to prevent the decline of Britain's construction sector. Well, that's according to a government-commissioned review into long-standing issues in the industry. The report warns that construction is hampered by low productivity, a lack of research and development, and a shrinking workforce, a factor likely to get worse in the event of a hard Brexit. Well, Mark Farmer is the author of that report and the chief executive of real estate and construction consultancy CAST. So, Mark, your message to the industry is modernise or die. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's trying to put everything into perspective around how stark the issues are. What I'm trying to do is create a real burning platform for some of the real deep-seated and systemic failures that I've seen in construction for the 9 months of carrying out the review. So you mentioned just then issues around productivity. So we're still building the same way effectively that we built 100 years ago. We haven't moved on. If you look at it compared to manufacturing, we're way behind around productivity. But for me...
So you want to see more prefabricated homes?
Yeah, so there's definitely a need for us to be building. We're always going to build traditionally, so we will always need bricklayers and carpenters or whatever, but there's an opportunity to also create a new sector within a sector, if you like, and to do more in a factory, and that's where productivity will be enhanced. And I think bearing in mind that the ageing workforce is probably the biggest risk that construction faces, it's really serious that we do that.
Yeah, I think the statistic is something like 700,000 people need to just come into the industry each year to replace those who are retiring or moving on. I mean, it's a huge number.
Yeah, it's 700,000 over a decade, actually. So, the issue is that there's probably 2 to 3 times as many people retiring every year than there are people coming in. So the reality is we are facing a declining workforce, and I think with Brexit as an overlay on that, the risks are even greater.
Yeah. Why is that, though? I mean, do young people just not see construction as being a sexy industry to be in these days?
I think it's two things. It's a combination that we have an aged workforce. So actually the average age of construction workers, particularly skilled tradesmen, is higher than average. And you're absolutely right. The industry is not seen as tremendously attractive to the youngsters. So I think there's a generational shift in terms of what kids want to do nowadays, and they don't necessarily want to be working on a cold, wet building site.
And you mentioned this skills shortage. I mean, is the building industry just not pulling its weight? Because I mean, I've had lots of house builders on this show, and they all say, yeah, we're doing loads to train up apprentices and so on.
More can be done, I think, is the summary of the review. I think there's some great stuff happening, and my review tries to shine a light on exemplar activity, and there's some really good examples of good stuff happening around apprenticeship programs. There's a lot happening around retraining ex-armed forces, for instance, even ex-convicts from prison, trying to get them back into work. So there's some great stuff, but it's not being done at an industrial scale. We need this to be happening right across the workforce to really make an impact on numbers.
Now, one of the things that you've called for is a tax on those companies who take on construction firms that aren't doing things in a sustainable way, i.e. bringing on talent in the industry. How would that work?
It's analogous to the carrier bag tax that's come in the last couple of years. So if you look at what's happening in the retail sector, a relatively modest charge, I think 5 pence a bag, has been imposed, and what that's done is acted as a behavioural change mechanism. So it's not so much about collecting a tax and the money disappearing into the exchequer. It's actually about changing behaviour. And one of the things my review highlights is that actually the change won't start in the industry. It needs to change. It needs to start with clients changing their mind as to how they actually commission construction work. So the idea is the 0.5%, which is what I'm suggesting, would be added to the cost of construction. Clients would think, I don't want to pay that. How do I get away without paying that? And that would be about doing things that would modernise the industry.
Do you think it's easily measurable?
It's something that the devil will be in the details. So I think there will be a lot of detailed work needed around an implementation plan. It would need to be done in a very distinct timescale to give industry the warning that's necessary, and there would need to be some very hard measures that make it, as you say, measurable as opposed to subjective.
All right, Mark Farmer, we've got to leave it there. Thanks for coming in.